So, welcome again. This is Mike Harrington. We're talking about building an exceptional business, and I'm excited to be here with you again today to share some ideas with you. Hopefully, you're getting some good information you can use in building your business, fixing it, or growing a new channel, or something along those lines. Just to reiterate a little bit about my background experience, I have over 40 years of experience in business. I have run companies at the president and CEO level, and I've built my own business from scratch, and I've seen success and I've seen failure, frankly. I think part of being a leader is there are certain things that you've been successful at and certain things you haven't. And I would wager to guess if somebody tells you they've always been successful, there's probably a niche or a part of their career that they haven't been as successful as they wanted to be. So I don't talk much about my education background, but I have a bachelor's degree in business, which I gained at night. I was working while I got that. I also have a master's degree in business, which I again garnered at night. And what I did in my master's degree, by going at night, I learned from people that were teaching me about a specific area like marketing, and they were a marketing VP, for example, or somebody was teaching me about sales. Well, they were a sales vice president. So I got the benefit of getting both the practical experience of their education and their experience, along with the education I was getting from the school that I went to. So I'm hoping you're getting some good information here, but let me just talk for a minute about rewards. Rewards are useful, and people say, well, I don't know, are rewards really worth the effort? Yeah, they are. Because I'll just give you an example of an award I used one time. I gave a trip out for a particular achievement, and it was for two people. So for a man and a woman, or a woman and a man, or girlfriend, guy, whatever. But there were two people on it. So not only did I get the person that worked for me involved, I got the person at home involved because they wanted to earn that reward. So that was a reward that was very beneficial to me. People worked hard. When the husband or the wife was spending more time at work, a little extra time, the person at home didn't really mind because they were excited about maybe the possibility of winning that trip. It gives recognition to top performers. People that are in the top half of or the top 10%, I should say, of your organization, usually they're there because they are the kind of people that need recognition. This gives you a chance with rewards to recognize them, both with extrinsic and intrinsic rewards, which we'll talk about as we go through this session. It engages your employees not only at the head level, but at the heart level. It's been said that people are working for money. People will work for money, but they'll die for a cause. What your job is as the leader is to figure out what that cause is that you can get the team rallied around. And what it does also is it stretches people. People are willing to work hard when they know there's a reward at the end of the tunnel. And so I think you should begin to think about rewards as an important part of your overall strategy. As we continue to look at the STAR system, the next thing we're going to focus on in today's segment is the reward system. So when we looked at companies that we were looking to acquire, we looked at how did they reward their employees. If we were looking to buy them, what was important to them? What did they say to their employees was important to them by the way they rewarded them? So why do you look at the reward system? What's important to focus on in the reward system? So let me just give you a couple of examples on that. When I looked at 3M, when I went to them in Minneapolis, and I said, hey, what's important when you're doing product development, which they did a lot of, as you know, 3M is noted for their product development. I began to look at what they did that were what I call intrinsic rewards. There are two kinds of rewards that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about extrinsic, meaning external, and intrinsic, meaning internal. And I said to 3M, I said, what do you guys do to promote product development, to make it part of your DNA? And they said, well, interesting, you should ask that. When our people are looking at products, one that we've created in our company a culture that says, hey, we want new products. So if you're an engineer or a sales guy or whatever position you're in, we want you to be thinking about new products. We focus on that. We make it part of our annual meetings. We make it part of everything we're about at 3M. So it's part of their intrinsic value system. We talked before about value system. We'll talk more about that later. this was part of their DNA. They made it part of their culture at 3M. Now, the way they reinforce that, if you're at 3M and you're walking down the hall and you see somebody with this little sort of a rotary kind of pin on it, that said that this person had created a product or been part of a team that created a product that had the potential to be $50 million or more. So the value system was intrinsic, meaning the culture that they created encouraged that, but now there was an extrinsic way or an external way for people to recognize that these people had created something in the 3M system that was rewarded. So extrinsic, external, intrinsic, meaning really something that people can focus on, that are focused on the internal, the heart, if you will, behind a product. So it's like pride in your work, being part of a team that has great results. Those are intrinsic things. Those are things that you can feel good about, that you can, you can't really put that in the bank, but it makes you feel good as a person that you've been a part of a team that built a new product. So first, let's talk about the external motivation. So what about external motivation? Well, I'll just give you a good example. I had a guy that was working for me in Texas, and I wanted him to move to Colorado. And so I said, hey, why don't you come up to Colorado for this promotion? And he said, well, I don't know if I can or not. And I said, well, is it the money? Is it location? Oh, no, my wife likes the money and we like the location. I said, well, what is it? He goes, well, I've got a son that plays football in this local town in Texas. And I said, well, we have football teams in Colorado. He goes, no, you don't understand. In this particular town in Texas, they have a stadium that will hold 15,000 people. This is a high school, by the way. And on a Friday night, they have everybody in town comes out for the football game. And my son, who is a sophomore, is playing on varsity. And I said, okay, I'm with you so far. So you still haven't told me why you can't come to Colorado. He said, well, I can't come to Colorado because my son, who is a sophomore playing on varsity, has great potential to be recruited by a good college if he continues along this route. And I said, okay. I said, tell you what, why don't you bring your family out to Colorado, let them take a look around, let them look at the different high schools that he might play if he was playing football out here. And so they did. They came out. So they went to 3 schools that day, 3 high schools. The first school, the coach there said, well, yeah, you're a sophomore. We don't usually let sophomores play in varsity. I don't think he'd even looked at the film that the other coach from Texas had sent. But, that was sort of not interested. So he goes to the next school, and the coach there was smart enough to have looked at the film and knows that in this particular high school this kid was coming from, these guys were all good football players, and you didn't play varsity as a sophomore unless you had some skill. So he said, you know what? I'm pretty sure you'll be starting for varsity at the position you're in. I think it was a linebacker or something like that. So, there was some interest there. The external motivator that got his attention was the last school that he went to. The last school he went to, he walked into the coach's office. The coach holds up a shirt with his name on it. He said, this is your varsity jersey that you'll be wearing when you play varsity for us. Now, I don't need to tell you that was a school that they chose to locate in, because that coach was smart enough to figure out what are some things that I can do to externally motivate this person to come to my school versus maybe going to another school. So important that you have the right external motivations in place. Other things you can do in the area of external motivation. Well, you can do things like you can pay people well. That's an external motivator. People get paid well. They want to work there. You can do things like bonuses at the end of the year, end of the quarter. If they're doing a great job, you want to reward that. You want to reinforce that good behavior. So you can create things that will reward them and give them those kinds of bonuses for that. You can do simple things like it don't cost a lot of money. Employee of the month, recognition in the monthly meeting. John or Mary did a great job. We want to recognize them as the employee of the month. We want to give them a special parking place. We want to give them a chance to be recognized by their peers. We can give them a plaque. We can do special privileges. We can do all kinds of things. So these are all external motivators. And I just want to tell you one about an experience that I had at Western Union. They had this thing called Pro Club. And Pro Club was an achievement in the sales and marketing area where if you exceeded your goal by 105%, you were a member of the Pro Club. And one year they had this thing called Elite Pro Club. And this is if you exceeded your goal by 120%. And so, of course, everybody in the sales organization, and I was part of that at the time, wanted to have a Elite Pro Club. And so what they did is they gave us a trip. They gave us a trip to, I believe it was Cancun, Mexico that year. And if you were in Elite Pro Club, they sent you to Spain. So there were all kinds of external motivators to reward positive behavior and above average expectation. So I want to make sure that when you look at external motivators, you look at all those things that you can do. It doesn't always have to be money. It can be rewards, can be a plaque, can be points in a catalog, can be a lot of different things. But make sure that you have those things in your organization. Okay, and I'm just going to mention one thing that my daughter does with autistic kids, which is kind of important. When you're working with an autistic child, you don't chide them for not doing the right thing. You only focus on good behavior. So when the child is told to do something and they don't do it, you don't acknowledge that. But when the child does something good, you acknowledge that and you reinforce the good behavior. And that's really what you're trying to do in business. You're trying to reinforce good behavior to make sure that your people are doing and focusing on the right things. So there should be, and this is the other thing that you get in some of these external motivators. You want to make sure that everything is fair. For example, when we did this thing in sales for our salespeople at Western Union or ITT, where I worked for some period of time, we always made it fair because we said, okay, listen, we're only one piece. We're the person out knocking on the door and getting the order, but we had support people that could be nominated to go with us on these trips. So it wasn't like, oh, okay, I'm doing all the work. You guys got the order. I did all the work. I got the install. I got all that. And I don't get any credit for that. We did recognize that as an external motivator. We allowed them to go on the trip as well. So let's move now into the extrinsic area. Now it's been said that, I said before in one of these sessions that people will work for money, but they'll die for a cause. And what you're really trying to do with the intrinsic part of your motivation and your reward system is making sure that people buy into your organization's philosophy or your goals by having an internal measurement. So what are some things you can do to reinforce the intrinsic value? Well, I talked before about 3M. 3M had made this part of their DNA. When you go to 3M, you know what they stand for as a company. Their innovation is the way they go to market. They create new products. I mean, I don't know how many new products they create a year, but when they built that desire to be the innovator in the marketplace, they put everything behind it. Their infrastructure, their sales organization, the Skunk Works, all those things we've talked about before were all built around reinforcing the intrinsic value of being a contributor to a new product at 3M. So here's what I mean when I say your hearts and your minds. I'll just read a scripture in Mark 12:30. It says this: "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength." This is what was Jesus' greatest commandment. So Jesus knew that, hey, it's one thing to have a head knowledge of who I am, but I want you to be all in. And that's really what you want your employees to be, is all in. So when you're asking them to work hard and stay late and put in the extra hours, you want to make sure you have the external motivators, the external rewards, which we've talked about, but you also want to make sure that you have the internal motivation. And as I mentioned before, when you were wearing a Pro Club or an Elite Pro Club ring, if you're in a sales organization and you were walking around the building with that ring on your finger, people knew that you were really something special, and that you had been rewarded for giving above average performance. You want to be careful and not reward what your expectations are. You want to reward people for above average expectations. You want to give them stretch goals. You want to reward them for something that is really important, that really goes beyond the norm. There's only so many Medal of Honor winners, and there's a reason for that. There's a lot of people that do heroic things in the service of our military, but there's only a very few, I think 100 or so, that have the Medal of Honor, because it's reserved for those people that do an outstanding and exceptional job. So all these rewards, whether they're extrinsic or intrinsic, are all designed to make sure that people see in a tangible way that you appreciate the extra effort that they're giving. You want them to work harder, stay longer, put in extra hours, do all those things that will increase the value of your company. So, as a leader in your organization, reward those behaviors which produce the best results. You don't get a plaque for playing in the game. You get a plaque if you're a winner in the game, if you're a person that contributes more than is expected. You shouldn't be giving out plaques for people that participated. That's great. You appreciate that, but that's kind of what they get their salary for. There's been an old saying that I've used. It says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's really what the intrinsic part of this reward system is all about. People want to know, hey, listen, I'm getting paid for doing a good job, and there's rewards for that, but you want to give them rewards that are intrinsic, which really drive their inner being, their heart, if you will, into the game. I used to do these things where I send little notes around to people, note from the president, and I would reinforce. I had 10 principles that I was trying to reinforce. And if I found them in the act of doing something good, I would send them a little note, and I'd say, hey, John, Mary, you did a great job here. One of the principles was 80% and go. You were really being active in making that project move ahead. And I sent them a little note, said, hey, thank you for, living out this principle, this value in our organization. And I rewarded them by sending them a little note and maybe a little gift along with it. And it would be amazing to me how many times I'd walk around the building and see these little notes hanging on the wall of people. Note from the president. It wasn't worth a lot to me, but it was worth a lot to them to be recognized for the good job that they were doing. So remember, extrinsic, intrinsic, all important to the mix. And if you engage your employees' hearts, they will do amazing things for you. So I want to give you just one more example of rewards, which I think most of you will relate to. The airlines reward you for loyalty. A lot of companies have figured out that if they give you points or some value, that your loyalty can be reinforced. And, for example, I flew 2.5 million miles on United. And when I had my assistant book my travel, I said, try to get me on United first, because if you're a loyal member of United, they will reward you with upgrades and special things that you wouldn't get. Early boarding. They had a special lounge in Denver where I lived at the time, where you could go in and there was 4 or 5 people in there. And so there's a lot of different ways to reward people. I would just tell you the experience I had with United. They have this thing called Global Traveler. And there were only about 5 people in our company that traveled as much as I did. And I was one of the ones that held this black United Global Traveler card. And I used to think, wow, this is great privilege. Really a nice reward for me for traveling on United. And as I left the company, as I retired, somebody came into my office and they said, gee, Mike, I'm really sorry to see you go. And, I thought it was going to be a sort of melancholy kind of meeting. And then he said, and by the way, what are you going to do with your Global Traveler card? So the reward system was very important for the people that flew a lot like I did. And so I loved him anyway. And I said, I'm not really in control of that. The person that's my administrator, vice president of administration, controls those cards. So he went away dissatisfied. But I'm just saying the reward system that you have for your company, whatever it is, whether it's points, whether it's, and we're going to talk about intrinsic and extrinsic at some details we go through this session, but make sure you have the right reward system in place. That's our session today on reward system.